Greetings, peace, and power to everyone. Thank you so much for attending. This is our first orientation session. This is about the right to develop, and seating an interim government. This is something that we have not been privy to, and we have not done it. So let's just get right to it. All right. The Afro descendant and has the right to develop. This is the big thing that we have been deprived from. The right to develop, to develop our identity, the right to develop our properties, the right to develop our culture, the right to develop opportunities in a larger culture, the right to develop. So everyone has the right to develop. It's a human right. It's a human right, the right to develop. So what we're going to talk about today is self-government. Self-government. Nationalism, the ability to have a nation, is something that the other man has kept away from us. These poo-poo black nationalists. Oh, we don't want black nationalists. Even the civil rights organizations, we don't want black nationalists. This is silly, because having a nation gives you power. If you don't have a nation, especially in our case, we don't have power. We are now in a category of a simple minority people, which means we're just like the refugees, anybody coming off a boat. In fact, people, as Malcolm said, even if you come off of a boat, you have more power than the Afro descendant. So we have a right to be our national self. That's a great right. That would catapult us. If we took advantage of it, that would catapult us to probably around the 12th wealthiest entity in the world. So why don't we want to nationalize? We've given out declarations for over a year now. We only have 6,000 citizens. I mean, that's admirable. But we have about 20 million people, 18 to 20 million people that need to be in the category that the citizens are in. Because if we were, then we would have tremendous ability to be able to do for ourselves, to improve our lot, to improve our communities, to improve our children. Our children are terribly disappointed with us, and I don't blame them. We have made slave-like decisions, civil rights. That is like the anchor and the weight on our shoulders that we can't seem to get rid of, and we don't even have civil rights. So I really don't get the middle part of our population, the churches, the sororities, the fraternities, all of these people. I really don't get them, because they don't have civil rights. And even if they did, they couldn't trump national rights. So why has this been kept away from us? Because we live in a country of white supremacy. If we were to exert our natural rights to be who we are, our identity as Afro descendants, that would give us a superior right to title of the land. This would put us in the indigenous status. Indigenous people are superior in law to colonial people. Get that. Indigenous people, indigenous rights are superior to land title than colonialists. Why? It makes sense. Thieves I don't get superior title, even if they're forceful thieves. They don't get superior title. The international law calls them belligerent occupiers. We have to understand who we are so that we can stand up. Once we understand that we are an indigenous person, indigenous people with the right to develop, and the best way our right to develop this is by nationalizing our areas. So I'm gonna give you, let's look at some areas of our country that are just prime for redevelopment. Let me start with number one, Detroit. Detroit has over 85% Afro-descendant population. They have been oppressed for eons. They're being evicted. beyond gentrification. They are being evicted. They're being totally removed by a minority white population that controls $2 billion. Detroit has a $2 billion budget. Chicago has a $6 billion budget controlled by a small minority of white people. $2 billion. Okay. It is so easy to take Detroit. The reason why is that the only thing that we have to do is set up election apparatuses, because power transfers from votes in elections. Who said that only Caucasian people can set up election booths? We have to think. One of the things that our slavery past has drummed out of us, has beaten us out, is the ability to think for ourselves. We always want to put our power and give our power to the white man. Now we're scuffling over who we should vote for. Should we vote for Biden? Should we vote for Bernie Sanders? Should we vote for Kamala Harris? No, we should vote for ourselves. Let me give you the reason why. And this is the reason why I want you, as many as we can, into our courses so that we can develop you, so that you can develop your areas, wherever you live at. If you live in Detroit, that's a prime area. Baltimore, all the majority, Birmingham, Alabama, all the majority population areas are ripe for takeover. All we need to do is to vote them out of office by having our own election. I'm not talking about their election apparatuses. I'm talking about our own election machines. The Institute knows how to run an election, just like white folks know how to run an election. We know how to buy voting machines. Voting machines cost about $5,000. Okay, so in a city like Detroit, 700,000 people, we need 20 or 30 or more voting machines. We've already budgeted it out. To take Detroit, to take over a $2 billion budget, we need less than $1 million to take over a $2 billion budget. Does that sound like a bet? I'm just talking in plain sense. $2 billion. All we need is $1 million to put up an apparatus, a voting machine, vote them out of office, and put in our own government. But you have to be trained. And that's the reason why we're here today. We're here to show you what's at stake and how to obtain it. So I'm gonna cut right to a video that I obtained for you called A Provisional Government. Interim government and provisional government is the same thing. They provide for the people. So let's get right into the video. It's about 2 minutes. Then I'll be right back to you, and we're going to explain what this course is about and why we are looking to see 400 people in the course so that we can take back our country. Our country. That sounds foreign to you, I know. But we have evidence that we were here, African people, the ancient Africans founded America over 200,000 years ago. We have evidence. We have peer reviews at the higher echelon level of education. We have all of those reviews. So, but let's get back. That's important. So hold that. We're indigenous. Hold that. I know that's foreign to you, but I want you to develop that and develop that thought so that you begin to understand what we're talking about when we're talking about a legal bloodless takeover by just having your signatures. Okay, let's cut to the provisional government. And then I'm going to come right back at you. Okay, this is going to be a short 2-minute informational brief on what provisional governments are and what power they have and what they can do. Then I'll be right back.
A provisional government, also called an interim or transitional government, is an emergency governmental authority set up to manage a political transition, generally in the cases of new nations, or following the collapse of the previous governing administration. Provisional governments are generally appointed, and frequently arise either during or after civil or foreign wars. Provisional governments maintain power until a new government can be appointed by a regular political process, which is generally an election. They may be involved with defining the legal structure of subsequent regimes, guidelines related to human rights and political freedoms, the structure of the economy, government institutions, and international alignment. Provisional governments differ from caretaker governments, which are responsible for governing within an established parliamentary system and serve as placeholders following a motion of no confidence, or following the dissolution of the ruling coalition. In opinion of Yossi Shane and Juan J. Linz, provisional governments can be classified to four groups. Revolutionary provisional governments, when the former regime is overthrown and the power belongs to the ones who have overthrown it. Power-sharing provisional governments, when the power is shared between former regime and the ones who are trying to change it. Incumbent provisional governments, when the power during transitional period belongs to the former regime. International provisional governments, when the power during the transitional period belongs to the international community. The establishment of provisional governments is frequently tied to the implementation of transitional justice. Decisions related to transitional justice can determine who is allowed to participate in a provisional government. The early provisional governments were created to prepare for the return of royal rule. Irregularly convened assemblies during the English Revolution, such as Confederate Ireland 1641–49, were described as provisional. The practice of using provisional government as part of a formal name can be traced to Talleyrand's government in France in 1814. The numerous provisional governments during the revolutions of 1848 gave the word its modern meaning, a liberal government established to prepare for elections. The most notable provisional government was the Russian Provisional Government in 1917.
Provisional government. I want you to put this down. I hope you have your pen, really good memory, but hopefully you have a pen to take notes. I'm a professor, so I prefer that you take notes. Let's talk. If you are taking notes, we're talking about a power sharing government, of course. Let's get this notion of let's separate. Let's clarify that because that's not really legal stuff. That's an emotional and an understandable emotional utterance. But let's focus on what we're talking about. We're talking about a power sharing government with the United States. The United States is a superpower, but we're able to have a new relationship with the United States if we decide to have that relationship. And this is the reason why we are fostering a different way to do this through a plebiscite and through establishing our own government. Our own government would power share with the United States government, but be able to control their areas. Let's talk about these relationships that the United States has with Guam, with Puerto Rico, with the American Indians, with Samoa, with the Marshall Islands, Mariana Islands, and about two other Virgin Islands, and about two other entities or countries or people that the United States share power with. This is the type of arrangement and the indigenous Hawaiians we want to have in our areas. Say, let's look at Detroit. Detroit, easy picking, majority population. We can take over the whole city, no problem. Within a year, it's going say a year and a half because it's going to take me about 2 years to fully train you on how to take over and how to govern a city government. And we're going to get into that. We're going to get into the syllabus of our course and the reason why we are looking to seat an interim government in areas. Detroit would be, we're looking at about, there's 20 states in which the African descendant population is a significant in the population. There are 1,200 cities in which the Afro-descendant, we are the majority population. These are easy pickings. We just don't understand how to go about politics. We don't understand that politics is a practice, a concern that it basically is who gets what. That's what politics is. That's all politics is. It's a science, if we can call it a science. It's a way that people govern in a society is by obtaining their portion of the society, who gets what. We are not thinking about politics, and the civil rights people that just fell on their face, they just are talking about voting for the lesser of the two evil white people. Come on, that's not politics. That's stupidity. Let's talk about politics. Politics is who gets what. That means that we have to decide in Detroit, in Chicago, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Birmingham, Miami Gardens, Jacksonville, all Cleveland, all of the areas, St. Louis, we have to decide for ourselves as to how we are going to control, how we're going to, first of all, to govern as a people, as an indigenous people. That's very important. So we have to understand that we are indigenous people. So the course introduces you to a way how to govern. It introduces you first to your right to govern. So we're going to talk about the right to self-determination, all the conventions of the world, all the United States is obligated to, and they can't do anything because they signed the Convention on Civil and Political Rights, which is Article 3, gives us the undeniable right to self-determination. They also signed the Reparations Declaration, UN 6147. They also signed, sir, that they would not discriminate. These are things that, because of our ineptitude, we have not been able to have them, and in our lack of innovation, political innovation, we have not been able to exert our rights under these particular conventions that the United States have signed. So our course talks about enabling our defenders, wherever you're at. If you're in Chicago, Baltimore, Birmingham, we want about 5 or 10 of you trained so that you can be able to explain governance and be able to exert the people to withdraw from the city council. This is our ballots, and to establish your own government in Baltimore, Detroit. It's easy. Don't think it's not. Well, I won't say easy, but the form, but how to do it is easy. The mental problems that we have with this can't, and this white man is such a big boohoo thing that we can't even obtain consent. So if you were in a polling booth and you had a choice of withdrawing from the city council and establishing your own government, when I say it's easy as this. You mark it on your paper, you know, we want to withdraw from the Detroit. I'm taking Detroit because it's the easiest city to bring into self-government because of its population. So I want to withdraw from the Detroit City Council. I want to establish, that's number one. Number two, I want to be a part, I want to establish our own Afro-descendant indigenous city council. 2, yes or no? 3 is that we would like to confederate with the Afro-descendant nation. 3. The reason why that is obvious. We have the lawyers, we have the know-how, we can train you on, and having a confederation is much more powerful than just having just Detroit hanging out there as an example. But if Detroit confederated with our over 100 organizations, our Indian tribes, it gives all of us much more power. And if there was any problems in Detroit, they can always rely on the Confederation to take that case up to the international courts, the international forums for resolution. That's how it's done. So let me give you I'm going to share with you another video. This video is a background of what you are going to become, the world that you're going to go in as a human rights defender. And it gives you an idea of what human rights defenders are. And basically, the training trains you to be a city and state facilitator and a human rights director. The overall name for this, in troubled areas, are called human rights defenders. And these are people who are specifically trained to go into troubled areas and to restore human rights. This is what you're going to be trained to do, as well as to sit on a council and being able to distribute reparations. That's going to take that little silly question that they have. Well, how are you going to distribute reparations? We have a city council. We have a national government. We know how we want to repair our people. We're going to, and we're going to solicit proposals from them, women's projects, juvenile projects, city construction projects. We're going to look at these proposals with this reparations man and decide which one of those will best improve our lot. That's our job. That's not Congress's job. They would fumble, and they have fumbled at everything that they have been entrusted to do in our behalf. Everything from the Freedmen's Bank. They corrupted that, took all the money out, didn't fund it after 2-3 years, and boom. We're not gonna play that game. We're very well aware of that stuff. So that's the reason why a national entity is more powerful than anything called a commission or called a coalition. So even though we're in Cobra, we disagree with in the end, giving the amount of reparations capital to a commission, appointed commission. Appointed by who? Appointed commission. No, that's not how that's not, with trillions of dollars, and that's what it would come to. You don't give that to a commission. You give it to, like everyone else, that is a collective entity, because they're collecting injury called a nation. That goes to a nation. So let's talk about, this is the world that I'm going to bring you into. This is the world of human rights defenders. After a year with the Institute, I'll put it like this. After 6 months with the Institute, you're going to know so much more and have such a much vivid realization of true politics and power than you have now, that you are going to be just exhilarated. After a year's training, we will be able, and this is the reason why we had to do this now, because this is July, end of July. We have an election coming up in November of 2020. From this July to next July, those who take the course, and the course is going to start in September. But even from September to September of 2020, you're going to be so informed, and you're going to have so many tools, and you're going to have so much, and you're going to have the ability to govern different cities and countries, and certain in your areas. So you will be able to, at that time, mount a challenge and be viable enough to negotiate along with us, because we're going to train you what we in the international law and human rights, to know what we know. So you will be trained to be able to lobby your people to this national point, and you'll be able to discuss this and negotiate the transition of power. So let's look at what human rights defenders do. Short video, and I'll be right back with you.
Human rights are the basic rights and freedoms that belong to every person in the world, from birth to death. They apply regardless of where you are from, what you believe, or how you choose to live your life. These basic rights are based on shared values like dignity, fairness, equality, respect, and independence. These values are defined and protected by law. However, crimes against humanity are still being committed today. These crimes are not isolated or sporadic events, but are part either of a government policy or a wide practice of atrocities tolerated or condemned by a government or a de facto authority. War crimes, murder, massacres, dehumanization, genocide, ethnic cleansing, deportations, unjust imprisonment, enslavement, cannibalism, torture, rape, political repression, racial discrimination, religious persecution, and other human rights abuses may reach the threshold of crimes against humanity if they are a part of a widespread or systematic practice. With the inspiration of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, HRD works for a world in which everyone has basic human rights and human rights are embraced, practiced, and protected by all. Human Rights Defenders, HRD, is a nonprofit and non-governmental organization. As an international civil society organization, HRD is independent of any political ideology, economic interest, or religion. It has aimed to support people who are exposed to all kinds of crimes against humanity. We work to defend right to life, rule of law, right to privacy, freedom of expression, freedom of thought, conscience and religion, freedom of associations.
Human rights defenders. So the training is going to be a mixture of human rights defender work in regards to crimes against humanity. That in and of itself is about a year. It's going to take us a year to understand crimes against humanity, because we have to understand a whole different way of thinking about our predicament. We are victims of war. We're not victims of the slave trade per se. In legal terms, we are victims of war. A war was protracted against us in our villages in Africa and our villages in America. I had to mix that because we had villages in America for thousands of years before the Americans drove up and colorized our country. And I say our country because it was ours a long time before the Europeans arrived here. And we have this parochial understanding that our situation only is 1619, that we just arrived in 1619. No, that's untrue. There were so many African tribes here that they weren't called Indians at that point. The Columbus called them Indians, but there were African tribes here: the Yamasee, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Creek. These were original Aboriginal African tribes. In fact, the Asian uh, uh, attributes that we think are predominant are not. They became predominant because of legislation by the colonialists, but the the um, makeup of the people who are here are African. The people that were brought here in the fourth population waves were African. That admixture in this theater, this American theater, and with the laws, has caused a division that shouldn't be. We are indigenous people and we can prove it. So don't even worry about that. And we're going to have some of our best scholars explain the proof of that. So you're going to have that. So you don't worry about that. And you're going to need that because most of our people think that we're just straight up Africans that came in the slave trade in 1619. That's that foolishness, and we're going to have to be able to apprise ourselves of the historical facts and be able to reteach that. Okay. Once we do that, then the understanding of crimes against humanity. Let's look at what they say was the 10 worst crimes against humanity. And they're not even going to mention us. And our crimes and the crimes that were committed against us were like 100 times worse than the crimes that were committed against the Jews. The Jews were only under this attack of the gas chambers for 4 years. We have been in the bowels of this beast for close to 400 and more years or more. Our crimes, the crimes that they're committed to break down our families, to destroy our families, the breeding farms, to treating us as animals and chattel farm, and this chattel status, is worse than the crimes that I'm about to show you. But this gives you the idea of what you are going to, in your position as a provisional government, as in transition. These are the things that you are going to have to unwind, undo, and provide legislation for to fix or try to fix through programs for women, programs for our children, programs for our elderly, programs to rehabilitate how our community looks. It should not be dirty. It shouldn't be any broken glass. The police should be out of, as those other policemen should be out. We have to replace them with our own police. The school teachers who miseducate our kids, they should be out. And of course, the city council should be out. They have to withdraw under the international law that we're going to teach you. We're going to teach you the Fourth Geneva Convention. It talks about civilians in areas of war. We are in an area of war. I'm a member of the International Bar, and I just there's committees that you can sign up to, and so one of the committees that I signed up to, I'll give you three committees that I signed up, very important for this piece. One, I signed up to the War Crimes Committee, because it's not, and we're going to learn this new language, this new understanding of what we're facing. It's not so much it's racial discrimination, but the big factors that I want our students, our candidates, our new leaders, our new government to deal with is decolonization. Because we have to decolonize, because we are really in racial colonies. They have put us through racial exclusions into racial colonies, even if they're not physical colonies. We are we're racial colonized at the banks, at the insurance companies, when we get to try to obtain a house. They have put us in a category. This categorization is colonization. Let me put it back. Let me say that again. The racial categorizations that they have done with us is called colonization. So the process that our new government will be involved in is called decolonization. We've already started the ball rolling. The Institute, and thank God I was able to do this with help of some of the defenders, to write a request to the United Nations Decolonization Committee to be placed on the decolonization list, with Puerto Rico's on the decolonization list, the Virgin Islands on the decolonization list. There's about 17 other islands and peoples that are on the decolonization list that have not been decolonized. So we're going to teach you that, and so that you'll be able to understand what kind of job that you're going to have. Now, when I show you these crimes against humanity, let me again explain, we're not on this list. I don't know who made this list up, but we should be number one. But this gives you an idea of what your job is going to be, because your job is really called restorative justice. Let me make a note of that, because you will be able to Google that, restorative justice. That's what your job as a provisional government would be, is to restore justice. we have 1 million people that are locked up right now. There are people. As soon as we gain power through the Democratic ballot, we are going to be the authority in charge of those people. The Indians that are in prison, people that are foreigners, um, they have their own policing departments. They have jails, and some of the Indians have agreements with the federal government that if an Indian gets in trouble, he doesn't go to a state prison, he goes to a federal place, or he goes to Indian jail. This is going to be your job, to be able to unwind these crimes and to restore justice. So you are going to be involved in this thing called restorative justice. Let's cut to the crimes against humanity, so you'll get somewhat a breath of what you're going to be dealt with and going to have to confront. So these are the 10 worst crimes against humanity. Civilian populations that have been terrorized, traumatized by bombings and by different acts by a government. These are crimes against humanity. Ours are much deeper, and this is the reason why we are here today. And with a much smaller audience, and I appreciate all of those who see this, and there's going to be a lot more people who do see this. We have been so traumatized that we think that even talking about freedom is radical. We have been so traumatized that we think that even talking about freedom is radical. We have been so traumatized that to even talk about having our own independence in America is radical. We have been so traumatized that our major organizations, called so-called mainstream, NAACP, ACL, Urban League, our middle class thinks we're radical because we want to be free. This is what you're going to be faced with in the first year. Of course, I don't even know if it's going to last that long because the population is going to be informed by your training and how we train you how to restore justice, how to restore the confidence in human existence and human life, and to a population that is as traumatized as our population is. How would you, if trained by us, how would you go into Detroit with a $2 billion budget and be able to undo the gentrification, the closing of all those schools in Detroit because they had to close a lot of schools to displace people? How would you deal with the juveniles that are locked up there, a corrupt police department that's based upon white power? This is what you're going to, as a sitting official, now in charge of government, to restore government, to restore humanity to our people. Your job is going to be easiest with our children. Our children are like a blank page. So as we get them in kindergarten and be able to redo their system of thinking and who they are, and then their opportunities that they now have in our new society, they're going to be the easiest ones to and we are such a resilient people, thank God, because we shouldn't even be here. But we're such a resilient people that our young people, our new generation, if we do what we need to do today, our new generation would have a great life. The adults in our is and the people that have been beaten down the most are the part of the budget that you're going to have to be able to work with the most and have the most innovative programs to restore, because the provisional government's job is going to be restorative justice, because the provisional government is a transitory government, which means that it's just put in place by appointments. It means that when you finish your studies, 2 years from now, you're a certified, bona fide city and state facilitator, human rights director, and now you're giving, most of you get your appointments. We may train 2,000 people, but 400 or 500 of you will get your appointments to. All of you would have been employed because we just don't have enough people to train at this level to be able to put in positions. But the people that would be directly in the provisional government would have this job of looking at the proposals that it takes to develop our society. The transition, the other aspect of the transitional government would be to prepare for elections, because the end goal of this is to have an elected government. Those of you who go through this training will have the opportunity to run for government, of course. But in the meantime, the seats in government, and I think they're going to be between $60,000 to $100,000, more or less, a little bit more, depending on what city that you're in and the size of that budget. In Detroit, we have a city budget of $2 billion, a population of about 800,000. So we figured that in Detroit, once you are go through the training and are seated as a member of the provisional government there, I think the city council is right around 100,000. But you can look that up. But but this training is very, very advanced. I've tried to make it as affordable as possible because we need you as much as you need us. We need you as much as you need us. So what we have done is to stretch the payments out to 30 months payments, which because this training ends up to be about $5,000. So we stretch it out so that your payments will be around $133 a month. And for the first 100 seats that we filled, we're going to discount those 25% because we need to take over Detroit. We need Detroit, Baltimore, the cities that are easiest to take over. And we're going to handpick about 6 other cities to really concentrate on to put a national government in place because they're easy. All we have to do is put in our election machines, do our canvassing, do our explanations to our populace who already understands what kind of condition they're in and are looking for a way out. Once we explain this to them and explain the benefit of being in charge of our own budget, so now this would increase the incomes and the quality of life in Detroit, Baltimore, and any place that this new government's in place. Because now this new government is employing its own people, has its own business community. We're talking about putting Black Wall Streets in every area. Let me put that again. Talking about putting Black Wall Streets in every city that we nationalize. So politics is an exercise of who gets what. In this configuration, they are going to, during this transition, is along with curing a lot of our deficiencies, black on black crime, a lot of that's going to go way down because now you got opportunity. I'm from Chicago, and I already know and we already know that and let me give you the prime example of how to deal with Chicago from two opposite of viewpoints and tactics. The Trump administration and those like them think that the way to deal with Chicago is by sending in the National Guard, by putting more police, by hiring more police. That's the exact opposite of what we're going to do. Let me say that again. The high crime rate, the black on black violence, the death toll, the Trump and his administration and people who think like him think that the only way to deal with a situation like Chicago or Baltimore and any inner cities is by putting in more police, bring in possibly the National Guard. That's what their solution is. Our solution is this. Instead of putting in more police, we're talking about putting in more money. So instead of having a 40 to 60 to 70% unemployment rate, we want to reduce that to about 6 to 5% or less. When people are employed, when people have hope, at the same time we'll be putting the same amounts or more into the school system because remember, our school children are the easiest and the best way to resolve this matter because they come up with fresh brains, enthusiasm, love. They proud of who they are. We want to keep that. Nurturing them all the way through, they're going to change the situation. They're going to drastically change the whole situation. This transitionary piece that we want to train you on would be to get to that. So we have to pour money into rehabilitation programs, restorative justice programs. We have in this configuration, we have people that are locked up. We have juveniles, 14 to 18 years old. Some of them have done bad things. But we have a non-custodial way to deal with that. We don't want them in custody. We want them in our custody. We may have them on in farming camps to retrain them. We may have them not in jail, but in juvenile hall, but on projects where they have to complete education, they have to complete these jobs, they have to do this, and they have to put in so many hours in community service before we give them a certificate of rehabilitation, which means brushing them off, training them up, kissing them on the head, and kissing them on the cheek, and putting them back into the society. This is the human rights approach. This is what you're going to learn with us. It's called restorative justice. What I just explained to you, just in a nutshell, is what is called the Beijing rules and the Tokyo rules. These are conferences that were held in Beijing, China, and Tokyo, Japan, that dealt with the issue of juvenile non-custodial care, and also dealt with adult non-custodial care. We want to be able to bring the adults who we have to work with more. We want to bring them out of those prisons. Most of them are petty thieves. And I don't want to say thieves, because when people are poor, deprived of the accrements and opportunities, and families they have to deal with, children to support, wives to give to, children to give to, they resort to doing whatever they can do to fulfill their duties. We understand that. And we have to look at all these cases one by one and have programs designed for each of them. This is restorative justice. This is your job as a provisional government, is restorative justice for these crimes against humanity. You have to be educated, and of course, I know everybody here is, to be able to keep up with our pace. The way I teach classes and the way our professors, I've trained a professor, and they already know how to. Some of them have the training. It's much like we're doing right now. It's online. I could put documents. I could send you documents. I could like right now we have Elena Portis in the house. Good, Elena. I wanted you to I want to invite Elena on, because Elena is one of our best students who went through the training. And she will be able to, and we sent her to Iran for 13 days. She's been with us to the United Nations, and she can tell you in her own words what this training is going to be able to do for you. Now, it opens up right now. Go on our site, register, apply. I think it's a $100 application fee. Do that right now, because that would lock in that 25% discount for the rest of your fees. So do that now. It's $100. Go in there and get on our candidate student list, because we're going to have another orientation next week, and all of this month we're going to be bringing in students, because we are ready, and our people are ready for a change. This is called reparations, by the way. Don't think that just going to Congress, which I think was, it wasn't even going to Congress. That was a subcommittee that had absolutely no power, but I'm glad we had to turn down. It exhilarated us in the international human rights community to know that we were ready for this, to be able to want this change. But the change comes from us. This is called operational reparations. In order to be able to even obtain reparations, which is a collective remedy, put that in quotes, it's a collective remedy for collective injuries. Governments, and this is why provisional government is so important, have to be able to redistribute the proposal money to programs that will restore the humanity of the people that has been taken from them as a result of the racial exclusions and the racial trauma. Let me do that one more time. Your job, and what we're going to train you to do through our human rights development courses, through through the conventions, through the principles, through the actual practice, because part of this, your training, would actually be hanging out with us lawyers as we deal with certain cases. You will be with us in Detroit, in Baltimore, in Congress, at the United Nations. We take you with us because we are what you call experiential post-secondary school, which means that experiential means that we not only teach, but we practice what we teach. So part of your training would actually be an internship with the Afro-descendant lawyers, or the Afro-descendant government in whatever area you're in. Um, it would be actually going with us, because you are going to have to be trained to do what you see us doing in front of Congress, what you see us doing in front of the city and state legislatures. We're going to take you with us, so you'll have your pen and pencil. You'll be our backup, and you'll be taking notes, because we're training you to replace us in these presentations. So because you're going to have to do these presentations before the state and the federal government, as well as the United Nations, as well as in your city town hall meetings, to explain to the people what you're doing and why you're doing it. This is going to be, and we don't know how long the transition is going to take. It could be anywhere from, depending on how fast we do this, anywhere from 3 to 7 years. The United States took 9 years, from 1776, when they first declared their independence, to the time that they enacted a constitution, was 1787. And they were much smaller than we are. It was 1787. That was 9 years. Of course, the technology wasn't there, and they didn't have communications as well as we did. But still, it's going to take a while to be able to, for the provisional government to get a hold on all these emergency situations that we talked about, the juveniles, the badly behaved adults that we have, the poverty, the schools, the land disputes. All of these are jobs for the provisional government, because you have to maintain the status quo until we have the elected government in place. So that's what you're trained from. That's what you'll be paid to do. That's what your erudition will be, which means that's what your knowledge base would be as a human rights uh, 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 defender that is a part of a provisional government in charge of restoring war crimes and restituting war crimes. All of this is proactive. This is not any money from the Congress as of yet, but it's money from, once we get into this point, it's money that we will be assessing from third governments. During this process, as an emerging nation, we're able to obtain billions of dollars, even in loans from different world banks, because they have a special section for emerging nations. So as we're going through this process to keep our cities afloat and what we're doing afloat, we may be drawing down $10 billion, $20 billion from other countries and other banks. Some of them will be giving this money not as a gift, but as a part of their duty to help emerging nations decolonize. It's part of the law. So where's the money going to come from? Third nations, the United Nations. Where's the training going to come from? It's going to come from the Institute as well as the United Nations. They have a professional ability that they've honed over the years, of when countries go through political changes and then there's a new government being put in place. They have transition teams that will help us negotiate with the United States through some of these difficult issues. And every issue is going to be difficult with these races. We talk about schools, transferring the schools into our. That's going to be the easiest one because we're indigenous. It's just that's going to be easy. So, I think to train our schools on a yearly basis, I think it's about $20 billion between $12 billion and $20 billion. That's going to come directly to us for our children and for our schools. So that's on a yearly basis. So that's going to come to us. The children that are in foster care, to come into our care, that's about another $8 to $10 billion, which comes directly to us, and we'll be able to nurture these poor children, put them on the right track, get them out of those different style foster homes, and get them into our homes where we can educate them and give them the right way to go. So we're talking about a $30 billion, $40 billion transfer. This is what your job would be in a transitional government. This is why you have to be well trained. A lot of people think that we could just set a provisional government. No, because you're not going to know what to do. We get into corruptness and all of that other stuff because you're going to be in charge of all these huge amounts of money. Not so. The way that you're going to be trained with us, you're going to be well trained. So as the transition is able to go through, you'll know what you're trying to get at with these programs. So if a program proposal comes in front of you and you remember the city or state council, and it's for foster children, you'll know exactly the questions to ask. You'll look at the budgets and you'll decide by yes or no votes whether you're going to approve that program. Adult crimes, the nonviolent crimes, there are a lot of them when it comes to question the political prisoners cases. We're going to deal with them like almost first, though, because they have to release our political prisoners. But the other prisoners, those cases in the transition are going to come before you. So you have to be well trained. So it's going to take a minute, and so I and my professors are going to go back and do what we do best, which is teaching. So you're going to see less of an imprint from me on daily course in the social media, and it's because it's time for us to do this real work of transition. You can't be in two places at one time. I'm also going to be going into the moderate sector of our society. I'm a professor, so I'm going to be dealing with a lot of professors. I'm going to be dealing with a lot of educators. I'm going to be dealing with those organizations that are moderately, the NAACP, the Urban League, all these organizations that have sizable a membership and a sizable budget. And we're going to talk about training them, retraining them to look at this political configuration a little differently. So, so I'm going to, and some of my defenders we're going to be dealing with the professors in the educational class as well as the middle class, the civil rights class to show them that we're not demons just because we're nationalists, or as they say, black nationalists. We're not demonized because of that. I mean, that's the most logical, sensible thing for us to be and for you to be, because you really don't have anything to be. Because anyway. As you see, it's going to take some extreme patience and skills to be able to navigate this piece, even through our own people. So that's another job that we're going to do. Now, on top of the theoretical and the analytical things that we're going to send you through. And I said send you through because I'm pretty difficult as a professor. I'm very nurturing, but I'm very exacting because you have to be exact. You have to be precise. You have to be good. I expect you to do some really good work, hard work, and to so that I can be and the people can feel assured that you're competent to sit as a member of an interim government. We want to make sure that you meet those standards. So uh, your studies are going to be about 2 years, and but as you go past this year mark, you're going to see a big difference in the way you personally look at things and conversate in about 6 months. In fact, people that have just obtained the ability to do 6 months with us. One of them is in Tanzania now at the African Human Rights Court, just based on 6 months of being with us. He didn't even complete, just a part of his studies. I really appreciate that, brother. Uh, then we have professors who've completed a portion of my case that are now inculcating this into their courses. So at the 6 months level, we're going to be able to give you the basic foundations of human rights practice, human rights law, and what you're going to be doing. Excuse me. And then at the year, we're going to call all of you to a convention. We're going to do a national Gary-like convention, because we have to decide as a people as to who we're going to endorse as a presidential candidate. At this time, you are going to be able to articulate this to all of the states that are going to be in attendance as to what the human rights approach to this is, and what we have to consider monetarily wise and politically wise, uh, as to what we're going to present to the presidential candidate who has to rely on us to become the next president of the United States. That's the power of the people. We have that power. We have the swing vote. And we've been misusing it by just allowing any kind of sidewinder to tell us that Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, Biden, and so forth. In any case, before any of those contestants want to obtain that seat, we have to figure out what our platform is. We want them to recognize us, of course. We want them to fund our schools, of course. So that's 20, 30, 50 on. We want them to approve our request for to put in these electoral apparatuses so that we can gauge our consent, or either we're not really in a democracy, because we're really not yet. So these type of things you are going to be able to do during that period of time, because the institute and we're facilitators. I'm not even going to be a part of the acceptance advisor. So the people that are going to be in government are going to be you, not me per se. I mean, I'll be there, but I may be. What I have to do now is to put together our family law, which is the easiest part, because each government has to have a judiciary. So I'll be putting together the judiciary, things like that. I'll help on consultation when you are in Baltimore or Detroit, or you are city council. You can always call us up at the Institute, or your professors up, and we will always be there for advice and discussion with you. But you are the ones that are going to be in those seats, not us. This is a course, an educational course, in which at the end of the 2 years, you will get a certificate of competency, so that we are then confident that we can back you in our appointment power to a position as and a seat in government. That's what this is. That's what this is. And so the first 100 people that come in, we'll do that. Elena, I'm going to have to. I'm. Let me see if I can. I don't know if you, Elena, are you in a place where I can get you in to speak to our candidates? Tell me. I'm well, I don't think that you are, but but we'll have Elena Porter back. She's going to be one of your professors, because she can we sent her through the ringer of these studies, so she's well aware. She's a good professor. She knows the courses and the course material, and she's a good person to be able to discuss things with. And of course, as the lead professor, I will be supervising these first classes to make sure that you get all of your information and your categories. And then we're going to send you into a writing class so you can write legislation, so that you can write legal briefs, so you can write communications to the United Nations. That's going to be a course that I'm going to teach at some part during your studies, so that we can be operational. This is called operational. At this point, this is the first phase of reparations, because believe me, those other groups aren't even close to being able to understand what they're dealing with. How reparations operates, and who we're going to obtain a reparations from, because I don't think it's going to be coming from Congress, because they're the defendants. So as these realizations come in, you are the ones going to be in place to be able to articulate what reparations is, your ability to distribute it, and to restore people and restorative justice. I'm going to be back next week for another hour of orientation into this class, and we'll pick it up. And so any questions that you have between this week and next week, make sure that you send them in to us at adselfdetermination@protonmail.com. And each of you are going to have, because this is high level information, you're going to have encrypted telephones. So each of you who decide to become a defender are going to, I want you to download the app on your phones called Signal. This is an encrypted device that everyone in the human rights sphere at our level has to use to have encrypted phone calls. Your encrypted email program, these are free. That's a free app. Is protonmail.com. It's an encrypted. Our servers are all in Sweden and all out the country, so they can't be, tampered with and gotten into by anybody, or any lesser people. Proton Mail. So your questions, if you have questions, is AD, African Descended Self-Determination, at protonmail.com. That's protonmail.com. That's an encrypted email, so that we can send you documents, you receive documents, and when you become students, you will some of your documents, a lot of your documents from me will be sent through from our Proton Mail account. And to be safe, I want you to have a Proton Mail account so that they could go into. This is just the level of politics that we're on. And so as you grow and mature into the international studies, and into your international profession, into your national professions, and into your government seats, you'll know what's at stake and what we're doing. So come back next Saturday, and we'll pick it up. Any questions that you have between now and next Saturday, email me. I'll try to respond to your questions. And you can also text me and and you can call our school, but it's best to leave a text messages, because we are moving to Atlanta. We're moving from our physical building is going to be in Atlanta, Georgia. So we have a phone number there, 678-619-4377. And it's just for questions, because I can't, are questions that you may have, because I can't, and I won't be able to conversate with especially in this next couple of months, because getting you in class and getting you situated and getting the funds for all of this is going to It's a handful. So text me and I'll respond. So next Saturday, come back. I want to see you all. Come back, and and I want to see you all in class too. Go to class now. Get your seat. So $100 to apply. That'll get you your discount up to 100 up to 100 seats, because we want to start in September. In fact, we must start in September, because you have to be ready for that national convention. I have to get you, and it's going to take about 6 to 12 months, 6 to 8, 10 months of training to get you to the point that when you're at our national convention, when we're talking about dealing with the next presidency of the United States, that you'll be able to articulate the human rights position to the people, our people that are going to be arriving from all of our states. And we're going to put it with placards. We're going to put everything from Alaska to Georgia. Everybody's going to have a placard, and so all the delegates. So if you're talking to a delegation, you're going to be able to, and we'll give you different delegations to talk with. So we may have 3 or 4 of you assigned to Illinois or New York, maybe 4 or 5 to New York, to different states, so that you can articulate what we want to the conclusions that we want to be able to ascertain after, as when that delegation gets into the posture of voting a yes or no for a candidate or a certain platform. So uh, so get into and we'll get your books and your syllabuses and everything that you're going to need. That'll be available to you. So get your place now. Apply now. Apply now. So thank you. I thank you so much. Um, and I'll be back here next Saturday, and we'll go from there. So I hope you have a continued good day of your Saturday. I'll be on Facebook sometime this week. You may be able to hit me, or you can hit me through my phone number or the email address. We want to be available to you, because you are the most important people in 400 years. Believe me. Thank you so much for having me this morning.